are live and direct, North Hollywood, California. You know what it is? It's the American Cholo podcast. The homie Boo Boo's in the house.
What's up? What's up? What's going on?
Today, it's my pleasure to bring a gentleman that is a writer, an author, a speaker, an award-winning essayist. When I heard essayist, I thought, damn, he's an essay. Mr. Brandon Loran Maxwell. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, man?
Thanks for having me.
No, man, thank you for coming on, man.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
The funny story with Brandon is... let's get to that first. Mexican-American, but your name is Brandon Loran Maxwell. You actually share a name with a big-time designer. I think his name is Brandon.
Yes.
That's why I put Loran in the middle. You type Brandon Maxwell and you get like Lady Gaga's.
Yeah.
So where do you come up with the name Brandon Loran Maxwell? Where did you get that name?
Well, so I was born Brandon Mays. My last name was Mays, and I got adopted when I think I was 3.
Okay.
And actually, my adoptive father was a professional blues musician.
Wow.
So I was always around music, and so he changed my middle names to Loran Maxwell, and to like basically commemorate my grandparents. Because my grandpa's name was Loran and my grandma's name was Maxine.
Right.
And when I got older and into writing, I was like, maybe I'll just keep the name and be Brandon Loran Maxwell because it has 3 names like an author should or something.
Right.
It had a ring, and I kind of like being different. You know, I mean, sometimes people complain about it, but I like being weird.
Yeah.
So I don't really care.
Chris, before we get to ahead of this, we got 2 different cameras. Let's turn that mic up a little bit on the mic audio right there. You see what's green? We got to keep the quality up there, baby. We got to keep the quality up there. There you go. I want to see it in the middle, and then we got the camera for this handsome gentleman right here. So that's where you got your name, but you're Mexican American.
Yeah.
When did you figure that out?
Well, I always knew I was Mexican American.
Well, if is your dad like your adopted dad Mexican?
Yeah, my real dad's Mexican.
So you grew up that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I always grew up. I mean, I was always the Mexican one. I mean, my 2 half sisters are white.
So you got adopted into a white family?
Yeah. I mean, you could say that way. You know, I mean, I have like a lot of people have a complicated family. I've got a Mexican side to my family. I've got an Irish side to my family. Like me, I'm Mexican and Irish.
Okay.
I've got my stepsister. They're from El Salvador, and I've got a stepbrother from El Salvador. So I've got a little bit of everything.
Yeah, blended family.
Blended family. For me, you know, I've always been really prideful of my Mexican heritage, and you know, living in a city that was a lot of Mexicans. You know, I think a lot of that pride came from that. And just
So how many of you guys were in the family, dude?
Well, me growing up, it was my mom, my dad, and my sisters. But over time, you know, different marriages.
So you're the only boy.
Stuff like that. Yeah. So I didn't grow up with my brothers. You know, my brothers grew up in a different state, and my dad wasn't.
So they were your biological brothers.
Yeah, they're my 2 half brothers. I don't really have any full siblings.
Right.
I have a bunch of half siblings from different.
So do you know your father? Your
Yeah, I talked to him. Yeah. He came around a
Chris,
little bit later in my life. He came back around. You know.
How much later in your life?
I think I was like 20 when he came back into my life. Yeah.
Is it off over there? Is it off? Is that what it is? I want to make sure. I wonder why. Maybe it was off during the time that we were just chilling over here. What do you get to? I want to make sure the cameras are working. Dude, you know what it is with the podcast, dude. I set this whole thing up earlier. I got home like around 3 o'clock from work. I set it all up. It was all working. Everything's great. I'm like, all right, cool.
It's technology. Man.
Yeah.
What it does.
I turn it off.
Yeah.
I come back, and all of a sudden I gotta change to my old OBS. There we go. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about, baby. I'm talking about some quality over here. All right, so. Where were you actually born and raised at?
So I was born in Boise.
Okay.
Then my mom left my Mexican dad initially and went over to Oregon. We were in a suburb of Portland. So
right.
I spent most of my life in Hillsboro, Aloha, Woodburn, which basically like Mexican American communities that bordered Portland. And yeah.
So how did you get into like the Cholo fucking community, you know what I mean?
That's a story in and of itself.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, when I was growing up, you know, you had a big influx of people leaving LA, taking gangs out of LA.
What year was this?
For a lot of reasons in the 80s.
Okay.
I met when I was young some of the first homeboys to come out of LA to bring gangs into Portland.
Into Portland.
LA, right. I knew all those early guys that were the first ones to bring
The first wave to come in.
Yeah, that first wave. And, you know, they were peppered around my neighborhood in my schools. And over time, it was kind of like everybody from my area was from the same gang. You know, they're from the same set. Well, different sets, but same gang. And, you know, one of my best homeboys was, you know, from that gang too. You know, my next door neighbor, and he was, you know, the dad of the son over there and stuff. And, you know, just over time, you know, you start kicking it with the older guys, the veteranos and stuff. And for me, it was like one thing led to another. You know, you start out holding guns, you know, things like that. And after you've been kicking it for 4 or 5 years, you know, the question comes up. You know,
it's time to get in.
Yeah, right. And that's how it was for me. And I still remember having that conversation with my homeboy Spanky and Sporty and a couple other guys. And
so these guys were originally from LA.
Yeah,
okay.
They were from Mexico and LA. So Spanky was from he was from Mexico. Sporty was from LA, and my other homeboy, whose name I won't say, but he was from LA too.
Okay.
All of them were from LA, pretty much. And you know
Chris froze. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and so. You know, I ended up getting jumped in. I was 15, you know, and...
So you live in Portland, you got jumped into an LA gang?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, King in Vermont. And I was like the first one in Oregon from that set. And, you know, it was funny because it kind of caused some friction with some of the Oregon guys at the time.
Yeah, yeah, I could see
that.
Was there gangs in Oregon?
Yeah, there were gangs, but there were other sets that had been out there that... had started with more Oregonians were in them and stuff like that, and they maybe started with LA guys. Right. And this one was very much still LA centric. Everybody was still in LA. They were like basically trying to grow a set out there, and there was all these kind of like proxy wars happening at the time in Portland between, you had 18th Street, you had Fifth Hill, you had Hobbs, you had Highland Park. And so all these guys were out there sending guys up there.
There was an influence out there.
Yeah, they all had neighborhoods and sets. Dulce was really big, and so you'd see guys that would come up from LA to fight and then go back and vice versa, and then people would traffic guns between LA and Portland and stuff like that. So you know, I still remember the first time I got a shotgun pulled on me. You know, it was some guy from Fifth Hill. I was like 13, walking down the street, and back then, you know. You're older, you know. Back then, the homeboys wore trench coats and stuff. And you know, I was young, and I'm like walking to the mall, and you know, these fools hit me up, man. And he's got that trench coat, and he whips out a sawed-off shotgun.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't see that nowadays.
No,
you know?
no.
But back then, that's how it was. That was and so you know, for better or worse, you know, those are who I learned from. Those are the guys I learned from. I knew a lot of veteranos from a lot of sets. Out of I knew the Oregon guys too, and you know, my homeboys always make fun of me because they'll say, "Oh, you're the pretty boy of everybody," and there's a lot of truth to that because I was always like about girls.
Yeah.
And but you still get into the inevitable stuff, you know. Yes. And you know, it wasn't long before, you know, you're getting in shootouts and stabbings, and I've got a huge scar here. Someone tried to stab me in the head once. They got my tattooing out. And, you know, eventually you get tired of it and you get locked up like I did, you know.
Yeah. It's the life.
So why'd you get locked up for?
Well, it's funny because I'd actually, you know, I'd gotten busted for a number of things leading up to this. Right. That were all, you know, basically gang related or little stupid things that the cops might get you for, like curfew or something. Yeah. As you start to kick up more dirt, sometimes you find that the police let you off for little things because they want to get you
for that big
bigger.
one.
Yeah, so you start getting to that point, and you know, I had gotten talked to about some shootings that I was around, and
allegedly.
And you know, they never were really able to get anybody to come forward or anything.
Yeah,
and. You know, I had a few homeboys that, you know, they got they got busted, or they got homeboys that got shot. You know, and just everybody started going different ways. That's some homeboys that get hooked on meth and lose their minds.
Yep.
And you know, I reached a point where I was like, you know, man, I mean, what? Because I dropped out of high school. You know, I dropped out when I was 17, and I remember the day that I was like, full time, I'm just gonna be a gang member. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do, because I've been kicking it with everybody for years now.
Yeah.
And I had this set on my jersey, you know, all bold, and I had a gun in my waistband that I always took with me everywhere. I had a couple guns. And another thing about back then, and you guys know this too, that you know, see, it's like, back then, you used to fight whenever you ran into somebody, and there were lots of times when you get in a fight at a stoplight, for example. Like, you're at a stop. I remember one time we got in a fight. Like, they fools roll up next to us. We get out of the car. We get in a big fight. Yeah. And one of them hops in my homeboy's car and flips it around and ran over my homeboy with his own car. And I mean, I remember another time. You know, we got into a thing with some fools, and they ran up on the side of the car, and they started dumping. And so we took off, and I told my homeboy, I was like, stay on the main road, you know what I mean? And of course he goes back into the country, and they're like behind us, you know, shooting. Yeah. And we ran out of gas.
What a time to run out of gas.
I know, and we're going like 50 miles an hour, and he loses the power steering. And so we crash into a light pole, and the light pole just goes over the top of our car, and like 2 carloads of dudes roll up, and they're all loaded. I mean, they're dumping on us. And it's me and a couple homeboys and a girl who just happened to be with us because she wanted to go to the mall. And we like grab her and we throw her out of the car and we start running, and we're going through all these sticker bushes. And I get through the other side. I thought for sure, I was like, okay, this is the time where I finally die. Like, this is the one. Before that, you know, you dodged a bunch of other bullets. And I get out to the other side of the briars, and I hear this, and there's this farmer with a shotgun. And he's like, get on the ground. And I'm like, what the heck, you know? Yeah. And he's like, I'm so sick of you cholos. And it was so funny, man. And I was like, oh, what? And in a way, he saved me. But he like was pointing a shotgun at me. And so he called the police, and he kept us there down on the ground at the shotgun point. And his wife and kids come out. And he's like, get in the bathroom. You know? And so he held us there at shotgun point until the cops came. Yeah. And they towed our car away and stuff like that. You know, it's like it's like you have so many stories that are like that. Yes. That are just like crazy. Like,
you can make a movie on them.
You can make a movie out of it, you know? And I mean, you just got story after story after story, and it was just like that was just how it is if you're involved in gangs. Yeah.
So how long were you running the gang scene, and then what transitioned you into start writing, going to college, all that stuff?
Man, I started writing when I was like 7 or 8, you know, poems, raps, stuff like that, but I never thought of myself as a writer. Right. And you know, when I dropped out of high school when I was 17, I was out of high school for maybe a year or so, and my principal called me, and she was like, you know, I've been thinking a lot about you. You've been out of high school for a year, and I know you're doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing, and she was like, why don't you just come meet with me and hear me out, you know? And so I went and met with her and stuff, and she was like, I think that I can help you graduate, but you're going to graduate a year late. You know, you're going to have to go to night school and all that. And she's like, but I want to see you take an arts program. And that's the only way we'll let you back in high school. Right. And I was like, all right, you know, I might be up for that. And she was like, you know, you can do dance or you can do theater. And me being at the time, I was like, well, I'm not going to dance, you know. And I'll do theater, but I'm not going to act. And she's like, well, all right. She's like, let's work with me here. And she's like, why don't you try writing a play? And so I wrote a play, and it ended up getting produced. And I was like, oh, well, I really enjoyed that. You know, it was fun. And so I started writing more and more outside of poetry and rap after that. Right. But I still didn't have any like goals in life. And I went and I ended up kind of chilling out a little bit. You know, I told the homeboys, like, this is getting old for me.
How did they take that?
20. It was a mixed bag. You know, I had some homeboys that were really upset about it, and then you know, nobody really. I had other homeboys that kind of laughed it off, but everybody knew I was down, so it was like nobody could really complain about that. Like, everybody was like, well, you know, he never ran, he never, you know, ratted, he never. It was like, he's him, you know. I've always been my own person, and you know, people when they leave that stuff, usually it's a couple different ways. Sometimes they just pack up and leave.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've seen many homeboys do that. And for me, I wasn't like that. I was like, I'm just going to be upfront about it, you know what I mean? And if everybody gets all upset about it...
Yeah.
And, but I wasn't going to, like, just disappear and start a new identity.
Yeah.
And so, it was a little bit rough at first, but everybody came back around. And so there's some homeboys that, they just... It wouldn't really make a difference because they never had anything going on in their lives.
Yeah.
And, and then I had other homeboys who were really supportive and who I still talk to till this day.
That's right.
Who have families and stuff like that. And, they want to see me do good and I want to see them do good.
Yes,
and when you reach a certain age and you have responsibilities and, you assume all that stuff, you look at things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And, no homeboy who's really your friend is ever going to put you in a position to fail.
Yes,
like,
yeah.
It's like when you're young, you think being down is doing whatever your homeboys ask, and maybe that's true. But real homeboys don't ask you to do things that they know is going to get you sent upstate. And that's the type of people that I always try to surround myself with. You know what I mean? Because when I was younger, I didn't know any better, so it was like, oh yeah. I'm holding guns for all the older fools. But when you get older, you're like, man, those guys are just taking advantage.
They're using
it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of homeboys I still talk to. I'm cool with, and then there's other ones I don't really know what happened. People disappear. People get hooked on drugs.
That happens in the hood all the time.
Yeah.
People think that. Especially when you're a young kid, they think you're gonna join a gang. You guys are gonna be forever together, like a puppy love, forever together. It doesn't work like that, dude. Most guys disappear. They get drugged out. They go to prison. They get fucked up. Okay, so now you're 27 years old. You're starting to realize, because I'm sure you stood off from the crowd in your neighborhood. Aside from being a pretty guy, aside from being the pretty guy, you were also a very intelligent guy, right? So when do you start going towards college?
So I got kicked out of my house, and I really had nowhere to go.
Why'd you get kicked out?
It was just, my parents were going through a divorce, and I wasn't doing anything with my life, and I kind of butted heads a lot with my adoptive dad, just growing up in general. And he knew I was out doing a lot of stuff I was doing, and he didn't like it.
Yeah. So
I started a band with a guy from San Diego. And I was like, well, I'll start a band because why not? And so I started a band, and I
what was the name of the band?
I think the first band was like called Dementia or something.
What are you guys
weird. playing? We were playing like punk rock and a little bit metal as you learned a little bit more.
And what do you play?
I played guitar.
Oh, nice. All right, cool.
And so you just learn some bar chords,
Right.
So that's kind of what we did, and I made money that way for like 4 years.
Oh, nice.
And
that's right.
It was fun, but then that also had its downsides because it was a lot of partying, a lot
That's
of
a downside.
girls.
Yeah, partying.
Well, it's not a downside, but if you're an excessive personality like me, where you're always you're balls to the wall with anything that you do, then it's always going to lead that way, and that's my personality. I never do anything half-assed.
You weren't progressing.
Right. Yeah. So it was like I was partying a lot, and I was getting in a lot of trouble, and I was walking home one night, and I just dipped inside like this country bar. Right. And I probably shouldn't have, but I used to love going out by myself and just bar hopping, and just seeing what happened, having fun. And, I mean, there were times back when I used to drink, that I'd wake up and I'm like, I'm gonna go drink. I'd hit the bar at 10, and I'd drink till 2. I'd drink like 14 hours. Right. And
from 10 in the morning?
Yeah.
Oh, I party animal.
Yeah, I used to party pretty hard, man. And I remember one time I was like walked up to the bar and I was like, what time do you guys close? And he was like, 2:30, and I'm like, oh, so I still have
10 minutes
or something. Yeah, and he's like, no, he's like in 10 minutes.
Oh,
and I didn't even know what time of day it was.
Yeah.
And so I was pretty out of control, and my mom, she was worried about me, and I overdosed in a parking lot one night, and so leading up to this, well, actually I got into a really bad fight also leading up to this point. Right. I was at a bar and I was with one of my homeboys, and he got into an argument with some guy and punched him and didn't tell me, and left with some girls. Well, I was leaving with some girls also after that, and another guy who I didn't know, but he was like one of those guys at the bar that like tacks himself onto you because he sees that you have girls with you.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And so he's like, "Oh, let me go hang out," and I was like, "Yeah, whatever, I don't care." And so we go to leave, and like this carload pulls up of guys, and they're like, "Where's the guy with the mohawk?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's my homeboy," And I was like,
"Oh, wrong answer."
And, yeah, and they're like, and he wasn't there anymore, and then I found out that they got in a fight, and the guy that was with me, he's like, I'm not going the back way through the alley. He's like, because we're going to get jumped. I'm taking the main way, so you can do whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to change the direction I'm walking just because I'm going to get jumped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because that's me,
that was the
right?
mentality.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whatever, I'm going to walk through the alley and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's see if they're
I
going
know
to back up
punk.
with their
Shit,
thing.
yeah.
So I walked through the alley and they all followed me in there, 5 or 6 of them, and I knew I was going to jump, so I just turned around through the first punch.
Yeah.
And then they jumped me, and they jumped me hard, man. I mean, it was probably the hardest I've ever been jumped. And I remember when I woke up, I had blood coming out of my ears, and I had an internal frontal lobe brain swelling.
Mm-hmm.
And they put me in a wheelchair in the hospital. And I remember the nurse was like, we've had people get less than this and never talk again.
Oh, fuck.
And so my mom was really concerned, and of course me, even though my face was all beat up, I was like, well, I'm going to get them back so it's better, And so that had happened, and I had healed up, and then I was out partying one night, and this is what brought me dipping into this bar. And so you just see how my life was just kind of spiraling out of control. I'd overdosed, I'd gotten jumped the following week, healed up, and now I was walking to this bar to party. And I was dancing with this girl who I guess came with another guy, and he got upset. They weren't together or anything, but he didn't like it. Yeah. And he was kind of like this hick type guy.
Right.
He came up behind me on the dance floor and he pushed me from behind. Well, when I turned around and punched him, it was like, it's not like a bar fight. I mean, it's like 15 years of getting in street fights and stabbings and shootings. It was like, I already know I got to lay him out as good as I can with that one shot. It's going to be a dog-out fight, right?
Yeah.
And so I cracked him, and I just kind of expected it to be, maybe we'll go at it, or, maybe...
Yeah, go at it, somebody breaks it up, security comes, breaks it up real quick.
And he's like... He made a really big sound, and then he, like, and he gets on his cell phone, he's like, I'm calling the police. And I was like, well, call the police. He pushed me. I was defending myself, and I went and got another beer and sat down. I was like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do anything. That's how I viewed it.
Took it.
Well, so the cops come, they arrest me, and they take me to jail, and I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll do a night in jail. It's just a bar fight. Because how many people get in bar fights?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So they're like, then they tell me, they're like, well, we're going to hold you through the weekend to meet with the judge. And I'm like, oh, whatever. Okay, so I'm doing 3 days in jail. And
yeah.
so I go to see the judge, and my attorney comes up to me, and he goes, I'm sorry, I can't represent you anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you weren't even representing me to begin with, but, what is it? And he goes, the guy you hit was the nephew of a district judge, and so they want to throw the book at you, so they up the charge to a mandatory minimum sentence of 7 years for assault with a deadly weapon. You broke his cheek.
Uh-huh.
And so my bail is $250,000, and so I went right back into jail, and then and so I went in there, and I went through withdrawals, in jail, and
withdrawals of what?
Alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah, at that point I'd been drinking for years every day, liquor. I mean, we used to drink. I'd drink a whole bottle of liquor before going out.
So you were a major alcoholic.
Yeah, you could probably say that.
I
still have trouble admitting it, but I'm probably...
That's the first step.
Yeah, so,
you're sitting in a jail cell just sweating, like, damn, I need a drink.
Yeah, those are nightmares.
It's hot.
And shaking, and,
the withdrawals.
Yeah, withdrawals. Tremors, they call them, and just nightmares and stuff like that. And so I'm sitting in jail, and the hardest part about jail is I was in to see around all my old homeboys, or a lot of my old homeboys, and all the politics that come with jail. And so they wanted to give me 7 years, and with mandatory minimum sentencing, the problem with it is, if you fight it and lose, you do all the time.
Right.
And so they stack up charges. They charged me with harassment of the body, which is some weird thing. So they just threw all these charges at me where I was like, I'll sign a plea, whatever, And so I signed a plea and agreed basically to something that never happened. I said that I went and I attacked him out of nowhere. He was sitting and eating, and I attacked him.
Oh, shit.
And at that time, I didn't think about really what was happening. I just wanted out after some months.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting with my attorney, and the attorney was like, he wants you to, he'll bump it to an assault 3 from an assault 2, but he won't do an assault 4. And I was like, well, what's the difference? I'm still doing the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, the district attorney wants you to feel it for the rest of your life, is what he said.
Wants you to what?
Feel it for the rest of your life.
Okay.
And with a felony.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't really understood really what that meant.
Yeah.
And when I got out and I started to try and have a normal life again, I didn't have my own house, I didn't have an education, I didn't have a car, I didn't have a job, nothing. You come out with a violent felony, and I applied to work at a gas station and they wouldn't hire me, and then that was when it really clicked on me. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be hard. Because everybody sees me as a violent felon.
Yeah.
Right.
And as if you just walk around assaulting people. And there's like no context or anything. Like, oh, it's just a bar fight and I hit somebody related to a district judge.
Right.
And so, I knew I needed to kill time. Yeah, and I was like, well, I'll go to school because that'll kill 4 years.
Nice.
And I figured, a lot of people just look at paper. And so if I have a piece of paper that says I'm a convicted felon, what do I have to balance that out?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll get a degree so I can show them on paper that there's a balance or that there's a progression in my life. Mm-hmm. Even though it wasn't convenient and it was expensive, some people are only going to look at paper.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear the story. So I went to college, and it was funny because I kept hearing these kids complain about doing essays for scholarships, because you fill out these essays to get scholarships, and sometimes you have to write a lot to get these scholarships, and the scholarships might only be $2,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And all the kids would always be like, well, I'm just going to go for the $50,000 scholarship because I'm not going to do all that work for only $2,000. Right. Well, for me, I was like, well, if all these kids don't want to do that, like, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because it's all cumulative. I'll just go for every little $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 scholarship I can.
Nice. And they give those out like candy.
Up, and there's no competition for them.
Right.
So I got a bunch of scholarships and helped pay my way through college. I ended up getting a speech communication scholarship, and I went, started writing political columns and started getting published before I finished my degree. And I worked in media for a while and interned in a lot of different places, and I always tell people this now, I put away my politics because, I see people that they'll be like, oh, I'm not going to take advantage of this opportunity because I disagree with this guy, politically or something like that. And that's easy to do when you're not a convicted felon. when you're a convicted felon, you need every opportunity you can take.
Yeah.
Right.
Beggars can't be choosers. And so I interned at conservative organizations, I interned at progressive organizations, I interned at a libertarian organization. Anyone who would teach me something, I took advantage of it. And I learned a lot because I got to work out in D.C. and I got to write opinion columns and learn from people that do that for a living, making arguments.
Very cool.
And stuff like that. And I hid my background for a long time from everybody. I didn't talk about stuff.
Were you... would you say you were ashamed of your background? Why would you say that you actually hid it?
I was afraid that nobody would take my politics seriously.
Okay.
And I think that I was afraid of not getting jobs. And even though a lot of the times the organizations would see I have a felony, they wouldn't say anything. And so I always felt like the times that I'd bring up stuff that was interesting to me, like I'm really into lowrider culture and stuff, and I had my first car was a Lowrider 67 Impala, and none of them were really interested in that. They're like, why is this guy talking about lowriders in Washington D.C.?
Because you don't live in L.A. or on the West Coast.
Yeah, and everybody was, as much as I liked it out there, I got sent out to cover this event off this island of Florida, and they had like all these politicians there, and it was like called a black tie cigar event. And they had all these Cuban cigars brought out in wheelbarrows and stuff. And all these like rich people were smoking cigars and drinking wine, and they were doing an art auction. And I was like, man, these are the people that represent us.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of being any more detached from working class people. And it just disgusted me. And I was supposed to like write about it objectively, but I ended up writing a column called like Fear and Loathing at the Altar of Reagan or something, and they got really upset and they fired me, and I was like, this is not going to work with me trying to be somebody that I'm not.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just need to take that gamble and be myself and write about things that I think are fascinating, people I know are fascinating, and I think that it's important that people who have made mistakes in their life, regardless of where they grew up, regardless of what they've done, that they can know that there's a way back.
Nice.
And so when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, to enter any industry like media, you have to have an idea that basically disrupts the industry, or you have to wait for a natural disruption. Well, I viewed the pandemic as a natural disruption. It disrupted every industry there was.
Yeah.
So I figured, I was like, well, that's my opportunity to start a new media website and get in there and bury those seeds while that crack is open. And now that crack's sealed up because everything's going back to normal again. But I was able to plant those seeds, get a following, start to get cited, things like that. And that's where I'm at now, running a media company that we're building from the ground up.
What's the name of your media company?
The name of the website's Daily Chela, the Daily Chela, and so we cover a lot of Chicano news, but we do other stuff outside of that. But we're very Chicano centric. We talk about I think things that a lot of media outlets are afraid to touch because they don't understand how to touch it. But with all of our writers, like our writers are all people that live the stuff that they talk about.
No, that's the funny part. And we were talking about it earlier behind the scenes. We had actually spoke about a month and a half ago, maybe something like that, right? And then I read one of your guys' article. I think it was your article. Now, is it a column? Is it a what would you call it?
Are you talking about
the whole Daily Chela? What would you guys call it?
Well, so it's you have essays, right? And then you have columns,
right?
Opinion columns. So they're all different. Essays tend to be a little bit longer,
right?
Naturally, I'm more of an essayist, so I write longer pieces, or I write opinion pieces. So. The one you're talking about is an essay. Yeah,
it was called Cholos Are as American as Apple Pie. I had already spoke with you about a month and a half ago, and then I saw it a few weeks after that, and I'm reading this article. I'm like, dude, this is a great article. Who is this guy? And I look at the name. I said, wait a minute, I think I have that guy in my contacts. and then I hit you up, and that was you, brother. And that just made this whole thing come together. Talk to me about that article and what your thoughts are about us Cholos and how you said Cholos are as American as apple pie.
Yeah. Well, I don't think a lot of people, understand the full history of gangs in this country. I don't think people understand how, they were a response in a lot of ways to government discrimination, how they were, a product of certain socioeconomic circumstances and things like that. And I wanted to write a column that kind of contextualized that for people, because it's easy to just say, oh, gang members, lock them all up, or see a big crowd of brown people and paint them all the same. But there's also a lot of really fascinating history there. And for me, there's a lot of interesting things behind the fashions, behind the cars, behind everything that I think pop culture takes for granted.
Right.
There's pain behind those things.
Yes, sir.
There's pain behind that beauty that led to those things, that molded and shaped those things, that a lot of people just don't think about. I think lowriding is a really good example of that. It's like no one ever really stopped to think about, like, well, why are cars bouncing up and down? Well, the whole reason hydraulics were put into cars to begin with is because they kept getting pulled over by police and harassed for being too low.
Yeah.
So they said, let's raise it up when we go past police officers. You can say that lowriding to that extent was like a civil rights issue. You're getting unfairly targeted because of your cars. And, there's a lot of history there that goes even beyond that. But, I think that more and more, and I have a few projects that we've talked about in the works,
right.
I think these stories and this history needs to be told and preserved. And, that's what I'm trying to do largely with the site as well, to give people an avenue who want to talk about Chicano art, for example, or Chicano Park. And, they don't have an outlet. They can't, and the media outlets that exist in like Latino media right now, like they're all East Coast centric.
Yes.
They're in New York or they're in DC, and they're not ran by Mexicans, they're not ran by Central Americans, which is basically the West Coast, right? So Central Americans or Mexicans. And so, you have a level of detachment where they view things sometimes that are stereotypes. They view as stereotypes, but to us, it's like, well, that's not a stereotype.
Yeah.
That's a culture. That's a real subculture.
Right,
You know, I remember when I was in DC and I was talking about Loran, and this girl's like, "Oh, that's a stereotype." I'm like, stereotype?
Yeah.
Like,
That's
are
what
you
we
kidding
do.
me? It's
That's
a whole
what-
subculture, and it's family oriented. It's community oriented. You know, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into those cars.
Tell
So
me
for
about
you
it.
to just like write it
Tell
off
me
is
about
like,
it.
well, stereotype for who?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So how'd you get into low riding? Did you start off as a kid, build a bicycle, or?
Well, I
Do you-
started washing dishes because I knew I wanted to get one when I turned 16, and I ended up saving up and I bought one.
You bought a lowrider bike, or?
I bought an Impala and then
Oh,
took stuff from there. Yeah, I had a lowrider bike too.
Yeah.
It was one of those lowrider bikes that had fake gold all over it. But when you're young, it looked.
It looks
looked
tight,
cool.
yeah.
That's right,
Until
that's
gold went,
right.
until gold
I had a purple
faded out.
mesh seat and stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Brandon, what's your thoughts on representation in Hollywood? It goes back to that first thing you were talking about right now, as far as, you know, the East Coast having their stuff. Why do you think we have such low representation in Hollywood, and why do you also believe that our Hollywood elites don't really back our play? Am I wrong for saying that?
No, I mean I think one of the weirdest, most ironic things is the fact that, you know, the heart of the movie industry is in LA, surrounded by culture.
Yes.
And yet they repeatedly say that they have a hard time finding people, or they put out things that are not necessarily representative, or they're not, you know, the right way. And, you know, it also sucks that when you do put something out, that you try to do something that's right, that it gets criticized by critics or torn apart by social media. It's full of people that like to whine about things. So, you know, there's no one easy solution where you're going to make everybody happy.
Of course not, yeah.
But I think most people can agree that you know, there is a lack of representation.
Absolutely.
And you know, I have a friend who's a critic at Rotten Tomatoes, and we talk sometimes, and you know, we've talked about this where she wants more positive representation and stuff, and I do too. But I always say also that we shouldn't get rid of the urban genre either.
Right.
You know, which sometimes gets criticized. Like my homie Kenneth Castillo, he's done 6 or 7 urban films. He did Counterpunch with Danny Trejo, and you know, those are solid, fascinating tales to share as well. And to me, like that story of family and brothers going different ways, that never gets old to me.
Right.
And there's a lot of passion there, and I like that. So we should still be able to have those, but we should also be able to tell other stories too. And sometimes Hollywood doesn't let that happen.
Now, do you think it's also our fault as consumers that we don't try to support that?
You know, I think about this sometimes because, look, why are the cartel shows so popular on Netflix, right?
Yeah, they're huge.
Well, they're popular because we love cartels, right? I mean, it's for real. And like, why did One Day at a Time get canceled the first time? Because no one watched it.
Yeah.
No one wants to see, you know, those things because they're kind of boring. And I'm kind of one of those people.
Right.
Like, I like Blood In, Blood Out.
Yeah, that was great.
It's like one of the most quotable movies outside of
Yeah.
Casablanca.
Yeah.
Right. I really, I can't think of a movie that's more quotable other than Casablanca.
Right, absolutely right. Now, I mean, that's what I love about your. Okay, do you call it a newspaper? Do you call it a column? What do you call a Daily Chela?
Well, it's a digital news website.
It's a digital. That's what I love about your thing. You guys have so much stuff that's Chicano based, Raza based. I try to say Cali Mac. Cali Mac. I'm gonna put out.
I like that. I've thought about it since we've talked about that.
Yeah, right.
I like that.
Central American Latinos, Indigenous, Mexican American Chicanos. So it kind of brings us all together, and that's what I like to put out there. You put out there Chicanos in Vietnam. And a lot of people don't realize, like when I brought that one Ranger guy, oh, why are you hanging out with? You don't know how much blood we as Chicanos, as Raza, have actually bled
Spilled
out
out
there.
there, yeah.
In the war field, especially like in Vietnam. So can you kind of talk
Well,
about that?
yeah. I mean, you know, there was a disproportionate number of Chicanos that died in Vietnam.
Yep.
You know, I mean, Vietnam was a flashpoint in the Chicano movement, really. I mean, the Chicano moratorium, if you remember it, I mean, there was a lot of people who were drafted out of LA and
my
out
dad.
of California. There you go. And they went over there and they paid the ultimate price, a lot of them. And the ones that even survived still paid the ultimate price.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they came back here, and even as a Mexican American community, you respect what they do. You know, you have a lot of people outside the Mexican American community, like white people, that just still treated them like crap, like secondhand citizens.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And so, I think that every year on that anniversary, I try to write something about the Chicano vets in Vietnam, because I think it's important to remember their contribution to this country, because all too often people look at people with brown skin as outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But they're all American.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And even the ones that come here and don't have citizenship are American in my view, because they're coming here to embrace the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether or not that dream exists is a separate debate, or whether or not it's feasible, or everybody has the same access to it. It's a different debate. Yeah. But the point is that their intention is to come here and to thrive and to contribute to this country. So, I think that, recognizing that these people make sacrifices for our country is important.
So we're going to take a small break right now. And what we're going to come back and talk about, since you kind of left it out there as far as immigrants, we're going to talk about Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
Cesar Chavez, I've been doing my homework on it. I'm sure you have too. I believe personally that Cesar Chavez was a great man, but I think that he separated us more than he unified us. And we're going to get on that. We're going to talk about prisoners, second chance. But I really want to get to you. I want to pick your brain about Cesar Chavez, because it's fascinating. So get us on that intermission round. We'll be back. Thank you guys for tapping in. Let's do it, Chris. I guess Chris did a great job with the video and making it work, but he dropped the ball on the audio for a little bit. But we're back. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate that. All right, so I even wrote this down. I write notes, right? Do you believe Cesar Chavez helped create division between Chicanos and immigrants, or did you think he did more of a good thing?
Well, I think that first people lose sight of what he was doing as a person to begin with. I mean, he was always a labor person. In fact, earlier today I was at lunch with you know who Compton David is. They call him Compton David.
Oh yeah, Compton David.
Yeah. So we were actually talking about Cesar Chavez earlier at lunch, and he was a union guy,
yes.
and he was always protecting American jobs, right, for his Mexican Americans.
Sounds kind of like Trump.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I also think that I think it's a discussion worth having, that he was imperfect, but I also think that it's detrimental and a waste of time to judge somebody's entire life and career based off a view that isn't affable to today, or maybe maybe it was the wrong view. I mean, I think I'm kind of an open borders guy, so for me, yeah, I disagree with that view. But he did a lot of good for the Chicano movement in terms of.
No, I definitely believe he did a lot of good stuff for the Chicano movement. But the more I start, I've been going down that rabbit hole in the last week or two, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe 3 weeks. I've been going down that rabbit hole, the Cesar Chavez, and what I'm getting from Cesar Chavez, he was a union guy. If you were a union guy, you love him. He pushed the union, but when he pushed the union, you're looking at it. He pushed it on the backs of pretty much the scabs for the illegal immigrants, the wetbacks as he called them, right? And I think that's where the division between Chicanos and Mexicans started. That's kind of what I'm getting at. I may be wrong. I don't know, but I think he was such a powerful voice for Chicanos in especially in California. And him and his brother-in-law, they were the original Minutemen. There you go. It's going to be connected. Yeah. Watch. There you go. See, I wasn't on the. What's that called? What's that called that I plugged in right now, Chris?
Patch cord.
Huh?
Ethernet cable.
Ethernet cable. We were on Wi-Fi. All right. So what did you lose us at? Where Brandon said I was right and he was.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, please.
So, what purpose is served in? Okay, so let's pretend that he's 100% wrong and he hated immigrants. Okay. Now, what purpose is served in acknowledging that? What happens now?
I think the purpose is served to admit the wrongdoings, and I want to say.
You admit the wrongdoing, then what?
Then we move forward. But
you just need an admission that that aspect.
It's pretty much like how African Americans say we need somebody, and they have. America has pretty much apologized for slavery, apologized for this. I think that was the main. And this is my thing, Brandon. I live in two or three different worlds. Okay, I live the Cholo world. I live the American world. I live the Chicano world because I eat, breathe Chicano. My wife's Mexican. I'm from a gang that's Chicano, but I'm also from Honduras.
Yeah.
All right. So I can sit there and see what other people don't see. And as my mother came here illegally, so I sit there and take like certain offense to that, especially how hot the political views were. Trump, how he was pushing it. If Cesar Chavez was around in this era the same way he was back then, he would be a Trump supporter. Am I lying? No, he would push to sit there and say, those wetbacks are taking our jobs, they're crossing the lines, they're fucking scabs. I mean, but that would just show like how Chicanos will sit there and say Chicano power, this and that, but screw the wetbacks, screw the immigrants. I think that's where the division in our raza came.
Yeah, well, I think that if we're gonna throw out the word Chicano, I think that people need to understand that there's a social side to Chicano culture and there's a political side to Chicano culture. So sure, maybe Cesar Chavez is a lightning rod on the political side of Chicano culture, right? On the civil rights, agricultural side of Chicano culture. But to basically denigrate or criticize all Chicanos for him, I think is misrepresentation of really what Chicano culture has become since Cesar Chavez. Yeah,
I get that.
So to say Chicanos, I mean, you're saying social side because you have lowriding, you have Chicano art, you have all these different subcultures of Chicano culture.
Yeah, but there's still certain Chicanos that will sit there and say, "You're not Rasta because you're not Chicano."
I think that I think there probably are. Yeah,
and I want to say that was kind of fueled by him. This I will say though. Cesar Chavez was a great man. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I can't take away what he did. He unified his people. When I say his people, the union people, the people that were in his camp that were trying to push for fucking getting unionized, getting better pay. Yeah. And I get that, but it kind of also reminds me of Trump. I mean, I hate to say it. It really does.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Trump. You know, I didn't like Trump at all. I was very, very against Trump, and I'm not a left wing guy, really. Right. You know what I mean? But I just didn't like Trump.
But you think in this cancel culture time that could you imagine somebody out there right now that was praised to be this very high guy, very esteemed, and then they come out and say, "Look at these wetbacks," or some guy saying, "Look at these and GERs." Like
I think that taking people from the past and placing them in the present and then assuming what their stances would be is a waste of time and a dangerous ground to walk.
But that's what's going on right now, right?
None of us know what somebody. Well, you can basically make a guess as to what it might be.
Well, no, it wasn't. It wasn't.
I mean, we can guess. Okay, well, maybe he would agree with Trump on this.
Well, he would agree on Trump on closing the borders, on building the wall, on getting these wetbacks out of here.
Maybe. I mean, there's no way to know. Look, I'm not like Mr. Cesar Chavez. I'm not an apologist for Cesar Chavez. You know, I think that he is like a lot of people in history that are, you know, he had some stances that were great and had some stances that were wrong. And I think that we set these people up for failure when we put them on such a high pedestal. Right. And I also think that we're in a weird place as a culture where we're spending way too much time going back and reevaluating everybody that ever lived before this time. Right. Almost to the point that we're not doing anything to go forward. I mean, it's really easy to tear down the past. Right. Building things is what's hard.
That's right.
And you know, it's part of the problem that I have with a lot of the younger generation. And I've been in this debate a lot on my own podcast, which is, you know, I hear a lot of whining. Right. And I hear a lot of like, tear this person down, cancel this person, or this person said this 200 years ago, therefore tear them out of the history books. Well, but I don't see a lot of stuff being built.
I bring that up also just to make a point also, because that is the cancel culture. Everybody's trying to cancel something. Everybody's being offended. Everybody's being this and that. And yeah, I agree with you 100%. As far as if that's the case, we got to cancel George Washington. We got to cancel Jefferson. We got to
nobody could fit the standard that of what some people want, like this perfect politics, perfect social stances, perfect.
Is that the woke community?
Well, I do. I call it the woke community all the time, and I mean sometimes people get upset. In fact, some guy went on my Instagram last night and left like 20 comments complaining about my view on Latinx.
That was a question.
That was my question right there.
Was that one of your questions?
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
First of all, what the hell is Latinx, dude?
Well, so Look, the Latinx started in Latin America, according to people who, seriously,
Allegedly.
yeah. Well, it's been traced to basically activist groups that wanted to use it for. They wanted a way to be able to have like a non-gendered version of Latinx. Right, of Latino or Latina, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't A or it wasn't O, they just put an X. And it began, supposedly, and I know a guy who's traced it, and he's pretty credible as a person, so I believe him when he tells me this, that it began, in Latin America with some activists. And they tried other times they tried other renditions of trying to do that. Right. Now, my problem with the word is that it's essentially been whatever it began as, okay? So maybe that's a noble thing to do. There's a segment of the community that doesn't feel represented by A's and O's. Mm-hmm. I feel like the term has pretty much been appropriated by white liberals at this point,
yes.
who basically use it to describe everybody they come across who has brown skin. Mm-hmm. And to me, I had a PR agency contact me a few weeks back, and they wanted to talk about quote-unquote Latinx lowrider culture. And in my head almost exploded.
Oh, yeah, all right.
Because I can't think of a more, a worse way to phrase that.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing as Latinx lowrider culture, right? I mean, it's Chicano lowrider culture, yes. Right? Everybody knows that. Yeah. And that's the problem. A lot of people don't know that who are white because they're trying to do it to sound, they're basically virtue signaling. Yeah. They're like, oh, I'm Mr. Progressive, and I'm going to call everything Latinx because everybody on my Twitter feed does. But real life is not Twitter. And the polls bear that out. I mean, it's something like, in fact, I posted on Daily Chela, but I think it's between 1% and 3% of people that actually use that term. Mm-hmm. And they're almost always in media and academia, or they're political activists. Mm-hmm. Regular working class people are out there, laying bricks for a living. They don't have time to think about those terms, and usually when they hear those terms, they laugh at it and see it as something that's ridiculous. It pushes people away. I don't think it brings people in.
Well, don't you? When I hear Latinx, I think, dude, it's already hard enough. That's why I came up with the Cali Mac thing. It's already hard enough for us to differentiate. Are we Mexican? Are we Chicano? Are we Central American? Are we Puerto Rican? Are we Dominican? It's like we're already having all this argument within ourselves as a whole group. Now we just throw another wrench into the argument.
I think that we should stop looking for ways to consolidate everybody into a block, and just acknowledge the fact that everybody's different cultures, different nationalities. Everybody has a beautiful side, and everybody has something to contribute. I largely believe that when these generic terms are used by the media, by academia, it's for political purposes. It's to consolidate people into voting blocks. It's to, but the problem, one thing that I hate about it that I didn't mention is that whether or not this is the intention, right. I feel like if you're calling something Latinx lowrider culture, you're essentially promoting the erasure of an entire community. Right. And so you're erasing history in some respects, and that's part of the problem that I have with it. And I don't know if that's everybody's intention. I just think that people are using it as a lazy crutch. They're like, oh, well, I'll just use this for everybody who's brown that I come across.
The thing that, with the Latinx thing, I don't agree with it. But I think we do have to come together with a term, and I myself figured, because that's why LGBTQ did theirs. Why? Because you had the homosexual community arguing amongst themselves. I'm lesbian. I'm not gay. I'm bisexual. I'm this. I'm queer. I'm this. So they finally came together and said, all right, guys, let's come up with a term, LGBTQ. That way we could all get under one umbrella. When you just say Chicano, that excludes, as far as a movement goes, that excludes Dominicans, Central Americans.
I think there's a place where you can have a term. It's not about the terms as much as it's about the context. You have people that are using them in the wrong context.
Right.
I mean, there are times when you can use a blanket term, like Latino is a blanket term, right?
Some people don't like it.
Right.
People don't like it.
Some people don't like it.
Yeah, the Latinas didn't like it.
I'm not
because then they were like, why are you calling me Latino?
But what I'm saying is there's a place for those generic terms. But if you're talking to an audience that's all Mexican, why are you using that term? Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be. You should use the word Mexican. Be specific.
But some people will say they're not Mexican. That's the crazy part. We can sit here and argue, and I'm not talking about you and I. Just
If you
in
have,
general.
wait, what do you mean not Mexican though? If it's a room full of Mexicans, they're Mexican.
No. I got Mexicans that work at work. They'll say he's not Mexican. ¿Hablas español, güey?
I don't know Spanish.
Were you born in Mexico?
Nope.
Then you're not Mexican.
Oh, well, no, but that's blasphemy to some people.
Yeah.
Some people would say,
No,
well,
but
I
I'm
know.
saying,
my
like,
parents
we're
are
being
Mexican.
technical about it, right? I know how it goes, because I call myself Mexican. Everybody, I mean, all the homeboys call each other Mexican.
But they're not
Anyway,
Mexicans.
Right, not technically.
No,
because
well,
you're
that's
not,
what I'm
you're
saying.
not
We gotta come with the-
holding
You were born in
citizenship
Mexico,
of
yeah.
Mexico.
We need to come
You're
with the
Americans.
terms.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're so divided that as far as Cali Max in America, because Mexicans is a certain thing, Chicanos is a certain thing, Puerto Ricans is a certain thing, Central Americans is a certain thing, even Salvadoreños are a certain thing. Everybody's got a certain thing, and until we can actually come together and say, dude, we're this.
Yeah.
And as long as we keep saying that, you Mexican?
Yeah.
No, you ain't Mexican.
I
You
know.
Chicano.
Yeah, I know.
But I got guys at work that say, ese güey no mexicano.
Yeah.
No,
I know, I've got that too, yeah. Well, I mean, but it's funny because I'll say this, like, if you're Mexican American, which are basically American of Mexican descent,
Chicano.
you have this weird license to call yourself Chicano, Mexican American, or Mexican. You just can't do it around other people who are actually Mexican. It's like, so
That's the thing. No, so you're a poser. You ain't Mexican. I'm like, you're Chicano, and me personally,
But, okay,
I
wait.
think you should be proud of that.
But if
Nothing wrong
everybody
with
else
that.
thinks you're Mexican, are you Mexican? Because if everybody thinks you're Mexican except for Mexicans,
Yeah,
are you
right,
Mexican
yeah.
or you're not Mexican?
No, that's like everybody says every Asian guy's a Chino.
Yeah.
And you got Filipinos, you got
Yeah.
everything else. Oh man! All right, so the Cesar Chavez one, yeah, I think it was good, man. So let's talk about. You had an article, prisoners, and you
Oh, yeah.
believe that prisoners should all get a second chance, regardless of how violent crimes, this and that. I agree with you. What's your take on prisoners, and should there be prison reform?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I just gave a talk yesterday to the University of Massachusetts about justice reform, and I'm talking to Bakersfield College in a couple weeks. You know, I mean, I think it's imperative that we figure out a way to fix our justice system, because right now it doesn't just impact the person who's incarcerated. It impacts their family, it impacts their children, it impacts communities because it impacts families, it impacts states. I mean, it all gets passed down, and if you don't want to do it because you're being empathetic or viewing people as humans, you know, even from a fiscal standpoint, it's disastrous. The amount of money that states spend to create a revolving door is crazy. Because imagine if you spent that money on schools or spent them on somewhere else more other than prisons,
Right.
or even reinvested it in rehabilitation programs. Because that's really what we need is rehabilitation programs, work programs. You need to give people an avenue or a way to redeem themselves.
Right.
Because if you're just putting someone in a box for whatever 10, 12 years, and then they come out and you're like, why aren't you fixed? Well, why do you
Yeah,
think? I mean,
yeah.
you didn't give them anything. They just
Stuck
sat
me in a
there.
cage.
Right. I mean,
10 years.
I feel like you can atone for your sins. You can take accountability and still rehabilitate yourself. I feel like they all go hand in hand. There's nothing saying that he shouldn't be in a work program or shouldn't be in rehabilitation. He's supposed to be punished for his crime.
Right.
You know, you can have all those things working in tandem with each other. You know, we don't have to be a society where we're saying just lock them up and throw away the key and deal with them in 10 years.
Right.
Like, we can be a society that says, okay, you know, hold people accountable, but man, let's give them a way back and give people who make a second mistake a way back, because sometimes you make multiple mistakes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there isn't a line that isn't crossed. I mean, of course, I mean, if you're out there and you're Jeffrey Dahmer and you're eating people, I mean, you might have to spend the rest of your life in jail.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know what else to say, but you know, the vast majority of people who are incarcerated are in there because they made mistakes as drug addicts. They suffer from addictions. They have other socioeconomic issues that drive them. You know, in my own experience, and I've spent most of my life around criminals, you know, there's a very small faction of people who are just naturally criminally minded,
Right.
and their entire existence is like, how do I rob the next bank? There's almost always other things going on. And so, you know, I think the vast majority of people are redeemable and good people. And when I think about my own time being locked up, you know, as tough as it was, and as how everybody kind of has that act of being hard, and there's all these politics involved, I never saw more humanity than when I would see a mother crying on the other side of the window because she's not going to see her son for 15 years.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, you hide those emotions, you don't show them, but it stays with you.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think it's important for me to talk about those issues. And I absolutely agree. Yeah, we should be reforming our justice system.
I agree with you to a point, but I think the biggest problem, and people say I beat a dead horse in America, is the drug addiction. I mean, the majority of guys in prison are drug addicts, whether they
Right.
want to admit it or not. So we can have all these programs, but if these guys are still addicted to heroin, to meth, to crack, whatever they're smoking or doing, how do we solve that problem? Like, you can give all day long programs, teach you how to be a mechanic, teach you how to be a woodworker, right? But if you don't deal with the underlying problem, which is drug addiction, they're gonna come back and keep reoffending.
Well, I mean, I think there's some truth to the fact that some people have to hit rock bottom before they want to change. Some people, like me, you hit rock bottom and then you dig. And then when you hit rock bottom a second time with that shovel and you know you can't go any further, then you're like, okay, maybe I should change.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, all you can do is try to put people in a position to succeed. I mean, we're all responsible for ourselves at the end of the day.
Right.
But if we're not even attempting to try to give people an avenue to make a change in their lives, then what are we doing? You know, I mean, yeah, there's going to be people who are just never going to learn, I'm sure. But there's going to be people who do learn, who take advantage of those programs. I mean, I also feel like, you know, one of the things that we need to do is not... We shouldn't be throwing 50, 100 people into one class. I mean, we got to figure out a way to have more centrally focused programs on that person's individual issues,
right.
and give them an opportunity to get away from the bravado of groupthink, because and you know how it can be, right? I mean, you can be around a bunch of homeboys, and none of you are really bad people, but you end up doing something, but none of you want to back down, and you end up robbing a store or doing, and then everybody gets locked up, and it's the same with like addiction and stuff, man. It's like, people are afraid to reveal themselves or show emotions or be vulnerable when you're around a bunch of other people.
Yes.
But they really want to change inside. And so sometimes it's about getting people alone and giving them that opportunity to be able to do those things. So I don't know how you do that with a crowded justice system. I'm just saying that these are goals that we should strive for. I mean, if we can hit the goal of locking up, you know, however many people.
I believe that we just need to change the talk of prison, gangs, how in our communities they're celebrated. They're looked at as doctors. They're looked at as lawyers. I went to the joint. When we were young, people go to the joint, they'd come out and say like, it's like we went to Harvard, homeboy.
Yeah.
And I think until we actually change that narrative within our own community, it's gonna be the same shit, because there's not enough money out there to sit there and do all these programs, because either you're gonna give some programs to the schools, after school programs. I think most communities are tired of criminals. Most communities are tired of being victimized. Most communities are tired of being robbed. Most communities are tired of just, I mean, for so many decades now, people who work and have go out there every day, wake up at 5 a.m, 6 a.m, go to work. I personally don't want to sit there and keep paying for these guys to come in and out of prison. I'd rather give that program to the school. I'd rather give that program to somebody who really needs it. It's like those guys, it's a revolving door. And I know I got a lot of homies that when they're done, they're done. They're like, "Fool, I'm done with this." Like, all right, good for you. Mm-hmm. And I think you can put all those programs out there, but until we change that narrative as far as gangs are cool, prison's cool, I think we're gonna be in the same bubble, dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's another reason why it's good to have people like you, people like me, who, I mean, I was talking with David about the same thing earlier, you know, I mean, it's, what people don't see is the amount of time you lose. You know, I think about my life, and I think about the fact that I lost 13 years of my life.
Right.
13 years, man. Like, and I never did prom in school. I never, like, did any of those things that normal people do.
Yeah, but these court systems, they're handing out 10, 15 years for these small crimes. And then for these huge crimes, they're giving you 5 years. You know, how do you fix that? These judges, they're taking it upon themselves to be like, oh, I don't like the way you fucking look.
In California, the problem is this. I don't know if you know about the California politics right now as far as crime goes. The feds told them they need to lower down the population, right? In the county jails and in the prison system. So what happened They started releasing everybody. That's why you got all this homelessness out here. Those are guys that would be in the county jail, going in and out all day long.
And they're all in there for drug abuse.
In the state prison, they're letting them out. But what I see, and this, like I said, I live in the hood. Mm-hmm. I see more gang writing. A lot more gang writing. I see more activity going on there. Why? Because they're pushing these guys out here because they don't have the money to deal with them. It'd be great if we had a surplus. And right now, dude, America owes a lot of money, especially California. We owe a lot of money. The COVID's killed us. And I just think we need to just change that narrative. Gangster, and people get mad at me because I'd be like, this is gangster. Gangster is going to work, taking care of your family.
Yeah, that's right.
Gangster's waking up every morning, making sure you got fucking your bills paid, your car note paid, your rent paid, your house paid. Yep. Gangster's coming home on Friday with a paycheck in your pocket. Gangster ain't sitting on the block and smoking meth. That ain't gangster, homie.
Yeah, gangster's doing the hard thing in life.
Gangster,
and the easy thing is going to jail or prison.
Yes, that's the easy thing.
And I'll tell you, man. I mean, the hardest thing I think all the time. I'll drive past a bank and I'm like, man, I bet I could rob that bank. But that's the easy thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it would end me in prison or something like that. And having a family, holding down a job, doing what you have to do to pay the bills, staying out of debt, grinding every single day while life beats you down, right?
Yes.
Like that's something to respect, and that's something to that we should look up to, But I just
but there's not enough of gills out there that have podcasts to put that out there.
No, but I'm sure you've seen that, like Compton David, you, me, Boo Boo, a lot of other podcasts. This is the first time in history that you see us out there actually speaking as older guys instead of saying, hey, homie, do this, do that. No, we're actually saying, hey, homie, don't go that route.
That's kind of true.
Right?
Yeah.
This is the first time
the older
in
guys
history.
that I knew, because it was different generation. They didn't have podcasts, and it was on,
Well, if they would have podcasts, they'd be like, hey, homie, go to the block. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It would be a horrible
That'd be a meeting in the neighborhood.
It would be a horrible message.
Yeah.
Let's go to the hood. Because me personally, I believe, and it's true, misery loves company. Misery loves company. You got guys out there now that are older guys. I've never seen the heroin problem be so bad as it is today. Because why? Before, when I was a youngster, me and my homie Dusty were talking about this. We used to look at older guys like, because we were a young neighborhood back in the 80s, right? We ain't going to be like those vatos right there. Look at them fucking tecatos, 40 years old. Wah. That's what we got now. Every neighborhood, that's what you're going to become. You're going to become a bunch of tecatos. You're going to become fucking meth addicts. You're going to become... The sad part is that most of these young guys don't understand the grand prize of being a gangster is being in a prison cell waiting for that fucking needle and that spoon. That's the grand prize. There is no grand prize. It's a fake fucking world. And the real world is when you speak about it, when I speak about it, when he speaks about it, and we tell these young guys, that ain't the real world, homie. The real world's taking care of your family and your business, because one day you're going to wake up our age and be like, I fucked my life up.
Yeah,
and it comes quick.
Yeah, you do hit that point. I mean, you hit a point where, you hit the medium where you're like, you either made the decision in time to fix your life because you have other homeboys that didn't, and then you're like, oh man, you're 46, 47, you're working at a phone center doing something you really hate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Instead of making that decision to change in your 20s. But something I think about though. Okay, let's look at you and me though.
All right.
How are you saying that you're not glorifying gangs when your podcast is called American Cholo and I'm writing columns called Cholos or Americans Apple Pie?
I'll tell you how. If you go to school and you got a teacher that just gets the book, all right guys, this is history, did this in 1965 and just reads out of the book. When you get a teacher that gets a hat, puts a show on, it gets the classroom intrigued. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to intrigue the classroom, because if I just sat there and preached all day long, gangs are bad, don't do this,
Nobody can listen.
they'll tune out. They'll tune out. So what you're doing as well, you have to throw a little bit of gangsterism to get them in. You got to captivate the crowd. You got to captivate the students. And if you don't captivate them, some other vato is going to be like, hey, homie, it's about the hood. Whoa, he's going to captivate them, because I used to be that guy. I used to be that guy captivating these youngsters. Hey, homie, this is what we're doing in the hood. We're going to bang. We're going to do this. But now I'm captivating, and I say I'm working. I'm not showing pictures as a rapper. I'm showing pictures of me at work. I'm showing pictures of me having a good... I'm showing pictures of how good life could be if you don't go that route.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was kind of a question to think about, and I mean, I agree with you, and I mean, I don't know. I think that well, I kind of lost my train of thought now. Now I have like a million. Now I have a million different thoughts, but yeah.
That's this guy. So let's change it up real quick, man. Why doesn't media show the injustices of Calimax? And when I say that, I think last week, I showed you the video. I don't know if you've seen that 13-year-old kid in Chicago that got killed. His name was Adam Toledo, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. Cops chase him, 2 in the morning, 13-year-old kid, gets him in an alley. Cop tells him, put your hands up. Let me show you. Video, it went real quick. I'll give him that much. Kid puts his hands up. Cop shoots him in the chest one time. Kid dies. Why isn't that being shown in the media? If that was a young African-American kid, that should be in every CNN, every MSNBC, every single news you can tell. Why is it that when it comes to us, we get no airplay?
Well, I think that there's, unfortunately, I think there's a level of apathy in the wider Latino community when it comes to these issues as well. You don't see, thousands and thousands of Latinos in the street when these things happen. I mean, you see protests, I've seen some protests in LA that have been here and there, but nothing to the size of what you see BLM marches and things like that. It's just a difference in approach, I guess. And, it's this weird complacency, like a sleeping giant that just sits and lets itself get poked and poked and poked. Mm-hmm. But is it, you wonder if there's ever going to be that one that finally wakes everyone up. And I don't know,
No.
It's like a sleeping giant, but all its bones are apathetic. So it's never really going to move. It might rustle a little bit.
We're a sloppy sleeping giant, brother. That's what I've seen. They keep saying about Chicanos, Mexican, Cali Mex, we're a sleeping giant. No, we're a big, fat, sloppy sleeping giant. Being straight up, because we're not getting together. We don't push the issue. I used to be a guy who would sit there and say that the BLM riots and all that those guys are horrible. No, it's almost to the point where you got to riot because that's what the media wants to see. The media loves drama, and they get that drama, and they get results.
Yeah, I mean, I am against rioting. So, I mean, and I've gone back and forth with people online about that too. I mean, my analysis of rioting is pretty simple, right? I mean, if it's such an effective tool of change, then how come we're still dealing with the same thing in wake of every other riot we've had the past 100 years?
Yeah, but look. Before I used to be on the same boat as you. I'm not for looting. Okay, even writing, I'm just making this up. People don't go right. I'm not for looting. That's just some ghetto ass shit. Fools are just trying to take advantage. That has nothing to do with it. But as far as writing goes, with the Malcolm X stuff, he said they were scared of young black men, and they still are. They're scared of offending young black men because they will go out there and riot. But you know what? That gets results. And what I've seen.
But okay, I'll stop you there though. So it gets results out of fear of seeing another riot. But isn't that part of the problem? You haven't actually changed anybody's heart or mind. All you've done is got somebody to do something. No.
You're getting your media coverage. First of all, national news. You're getting laws changed. You're getting lawsuits.
What's changed? We're still dealing with it.
No,
that's my point.
No, we're always gonna deal with it. No, but the difference between the African American community and our community, as far as getting shot and killed, I want to say, I'm sure some brothers will get upset at me, Chris. I hope you don't. Is that brothers do not comply. Brothers will act a fucking fool. And I was having this conversation with Rooster. Rooster, shout out to you. At the pool, when you go to the swimming pool, public pool, what do they have right there? Do not run. Yes?
Yep.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes? Have you ever been to a public pool? They
Yeah.
say do not run. Why?
I don't want you to slip and fall.
Because you might eat shit, right?
Yeah.
Because you might eat shit. When it comes to a cop pulling you over, do not run. Why? Because you might get shot.
Yeah.
It's very fucking simple. It's a fucking rule. But the problem is, I think the African American community is giving themselves an injustice because they're emboldening the young brothers to run and do this, and they get shot and killed. When it comes to us, most time, we don't. We actually follow the rules, and we still get shot and killed. Yeah. But we don't say anything. So to me, it's coming to a point where I'm changing my thought and say, damn, we might have to burn some cop cars down. Yeah. We might have to fuck some shit up to get some attention.
I'm empathetic toward people that want to run from cops at times because I've had a lot of, when I was younger, I can't count how many times I had guns pointed at me by police.
Of course.
Oh,
and look, there are times that I did things that were bad, but there were also times when I was doing nothing but rolling in my Impala and getting pulled out of the car and a gun.
Yeah, but you were also a gang member. You're also known to carry guns. You've also known to be in shootings. You also know to sock guys at the fucking bar.
Well, okay, look, but all right. So this is all true. However, right, from a civil rights standpoint, there's nothing illegal about having a shaved head riding in an Impala going down the street. So it doesn't matter what you know I've done in the past or think I might do in the future.
Yeah, but you got
But in
stereotypes.
the streets, it matters. When you're sitting in your block kicking it, right, Brandon? And you're in your hood kicking it with the homies, right? When you see a white boy with the fucking long hairs, are you looking at him? Are you really scared of him? When you see a carload of guys with bald heads, are you stereotyping them?
Well, I've always said that, I mean, the biggest stereotypers of all are Mexicans on other Mexicans. I mean, I'll tell you right now that when we used to bang, first thing we looked for was Cortez's or a shaved head.
Yes. And you weren't stereotyping. That's the game. If you're a cop, you're looking at, you're thinking gangbang, you're thinking gun, you're thinking, I'm going to protect myself. You have to.
But the cop works for the state that we pay taxes for, or our parents do.
Right.
And so it's, you know...
but in their training, they're trained to stereotype us and say,
of course.
okay, you see a bald head, a white tee.
Right. I understand why they do it, but I think that it leads to abuse of power.
Of course.
I'm very...
Because they're taught not to give an inch. If you come with an attitude, me as a cop is taught, come with the harder attitude.
Yeah.
You go higher, I go higher.
Right. It has
you go
to,
higher, yeah.
Right.
Because if the cop goes down, then you just gave the power to the stereotypical
and that kind of brings
person.
up another issue, which is the training by police officers. I mean, police officers, a lot of times they come with the energy, like right off the bat, they're amped up.
Because that's how they're trained.
That's how they're trained. But I'm not sure that helps the situation.
No, that doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
That doesn't. That's for sure.
I saw in the news this guy in a wheelchair had a knife and he got shot, and I'm like, he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah,
like, why are they shooting some?
Cops are scary, dude. But those kind of cops, they should get tried. They should get at the very least involuntary manslaughter. Like that one who just got arrested for pulling out the taser.
Yeah.
I think you guys, you do. That's like
It's
driving
like driving drunk,
and being on your phone. And,
yeah.
That's like driving drunk. Come on, you should get that. But they shouldn't be riding off of that and saying, "Oh, he's a killer." Nah, that fool was out on bail. The guy who just got killed in Minneapolis, $100,000 bail for a gun. Was on Instagram with his strap, showing all the gun off, and the cops, that's what they got a warrant from. That's the dirty little secret they don't want to show. But to me, I see both sides of it, but I would rather have a cop live next to me than a fucking fool that's out there partying with his gun with his homies. You?
I'd rather not have neither.
If you had a choice. If you had a choice, I'd rather have a cop live next to me. I mean, straight up. If people say, "Oh, you're a fucking sellout," well, you want to have the homie over there with these fools, the strap, and somebody gets shot, and
you don't want to hear the oldies all night long? I'll put you to bed like in the day.
So, let me ask you about now. Let's switch it up a little bit. Family life, dude. What are you are you a family man now?
I mean, technically, I'm a family man.
Technically, it scares me. What do you mean? What do you mean technically?
I have a family.
Okay.
My wife would probably say that it's my biggest work in progress. Is, I don't know really what the word I'm looking for. It's a big adjustment from gangbanging for 10 years, playing in a punk rock band, and then you're a family guy.
Right.
And so for me, I've always needed some level of risk or some type of something interesting going on in my life. So you don't get that with a family, really. I mean, you have kids. That's where the interesting comes from, right?
You don't know my family.
I mean, I am.
You're living a life of high strung, and all of a sudden you go to a family life and it just drops you and you're on board.
It's a different kind of thing, I mean, like for me, I'm raising two kids that they're not technically my blood,
but they are kids.
But there are kids,
That's right.
and our teen daughter's going through her teenage years.
Oh yeah, good times.
And so it's you have a little bit of stress because you worry about them, and I recently had to go to the house of some parents and tell them, I was like, this is your only warning, your one warning, because I'm not going to be so nice to your son if I catch him,
Right.
And I didn't want to do it. But it's like you have to step in because I was a guy, and I know.
And the dad's not standing up. It's open game.
Right, and I don't like doing those types of things, but so the level of excitement and stress and all that is now from that.
That's right.
So it's different, and you adjust a little bit. And
where's my daughter's boyfriend? I'm gonna beat his head.
I'm adapting. I love my family. I love my wife, and my life's the best it's ever been in my life. And I feel like. I struggled a lot initially because I think I had unrealistic expectations. It's just like, just because you have a family doesn't mean that stresses in life don't go away.
Oh,
It doesn't mean you don't struggle to pay bills. It doesn't mean, you know.
No.
And I've come to accept that. You know, it's just you butt heads sometimes, and like me, I'm very individualistic, and I know that's tough sometimes for everybody else.
Right.
And so, you know, I need to be aware of myself too, and sometimes I have to make sacrifices. So,
That's right.
and she makes sacrifices because I travel around a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's family life because, like we were saying earlier, it's easy to say I don't give a fuck. It's easy to say I get into a fight with my wife, say fuck you, I'm gonna go.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
That's
The hard thing is moving forward. You find a way to get over the argument.
Yes.
You find a way to raise your kids,
Communicate.
and then hope that it pays off.
How's your relationship with your parents? I mean, I would say adoptive parent, but I would say your parents.
You know, I mean, we talk and we get along and stuff, and I mean, my relationship is with them is, you know, better than it was probably when I was younger.
Good.
So, you know, we talk. Jail brought a lot of people together. You know, a lot of my family, I think when I went through that, oddly enough, it brought a lot of family together because they
went through it with you.
Yeah, and you that's something you don't think about when you're young either. You know, when you're going in there, you don't think about the fact that your mom's in there with you, your sisters are in there with you, and everybody's suffering.
Right.
So,
Well, shout out to your wife and kids. Shout out to your mom and dad. I want to give you this opportunity to say where we can find you. We can find your your internet news column. And dude, I'm sure we'll be talking again, brother.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
let them know.
yeah. Well, I mean, you can follow me on social media at B, and then the number 2, and then THA, like the Max MAX. I don't know why I picked that because it's really hard for people to remember.
I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, one day, I don't know. But yeah, or you can just type in Brandon Loran Maxwell, not Brandon Maxwell, because you'll get.
He's the fashion guy.
You're gonna a bunch of dresses like I did.
So,
I was like,
The fashion guy was an American Cholo.
yeah, and dailychela.com. Yeah, check it out, and you know, we're growing and.
No, dude. Yeah, listen. Any of you guys who haven't yet gone to the Daily Chela, it's a great read, dude. I'm gonna subscribe tomorrow. Trust me, I'm gonna subscribe tomorrow. I think it's $1 a month or something. It starts off with that. It's a great read. It's a great Chicano just read, dude. This guy should have so much more in there, dude. It's great. You guys need to tap into it. Daily Chela. Other than that, it's Thursday. It's been a great conversation, brother.
Thanks for having me.
No, man, thank you for having me. Thank you guys for tapping in. We'll catch you guys later. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. All right, Chris. We're out, Playboy. Look at that. Oh, boy. Good shit, man. Good shit.
Thanks for having me, man.